Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my fellow Husky Harry, Huggable Homos, and friends, we love to review movies, either current or classic, on this show, which, now that I'm thinking back, it's end of November. Holy fuck, we're going to be like 13 years old in like 2 weeks. That's insanity to me, but whatever.
Well into
This is
puberty.
episode... I know, right? This is episode 518 of the Movie Bears podcast. We've got a big show for you this week. We are reviewing two movies from the current column. It is the showdown for the ages. We haven't had a bigger showdown since the whole Oppenheimer Barbie clash of the Titans. And of course, we are referring to Gladiator versus Wicked. We're really excited to talk about both of these films. Maybe a little more so one film than the other. I don't know. We'll see. I don't actually know how everybody feels about these films. So I'm really jazzed to jump into it. But first, let me introduce you to the folks that will be doing this show right along with me. Spoiler alert, we got a special guest. We'll tell you more about them later. But first, Jim Pugliafico is with us in the virtual studio. Hey, sweetheart. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm not feeling any less special, even though we have a special guest. But I'm feeling pretty good because, like you said, we have two big new movies that were released kind of at the same time. And we're going to talk about those. There's a ton to dive into, so I won't take up any time. But thanks, and I'm looking forward to going.
All right. Excellent. Well, really glad that you could be here for this convo, babe. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We also have the wonderful William Lindis with us on the show. Will, how are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be here with the three of you, as we'll talk about here in a moment, as well as with all of our listeners, all the gladiators and flying monkeys watching live and listening from their cars or wherever they happen to be on their commute. This is one that I know that this set of films is one that I know that we've been talking about internally a lot. More so than probably we normally do with films. Usually we withhold a lot of our information, but this one's juicy. And seeing everything that's been out on social media and Facebook, gosh, we're in for a hell of a convo tonight. So can't wait.
Completely agree. And we've got someone in the live chat, Big Dan, who says, looking great, Will. Yes, Will, you've got this cool like green alphabet thing with like some like eyeliner and mascara. Like you were looking sharp and fierce, my friend.
Yeah, I figured what better reason to bust out the guy liner than for Glicked night. To be honest, there was more on here before, but it was not reading well on camera, so I just kept the eyeliner.
Well, there you go. I love that you ended up in a green shirt, Will, and I ended up in pink. It's like we've got Alphaba and Glinda. You don't know this, but Jim and our special guest are both going to get shirtless to represent the gladiators. So we'll have that. Oh, wait. Did y'all not consent to that? Oops. Sorry. I may have forgot to mention.
I thought that was... Okay.
Implied?
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
yeah.
All right.
We'll have to see about that.
Well, Will, thanks so much for being here. So jazzed to have you as part of this convo too. Also, big thanks to our special guest who is joining us this week. He's been on the show before a couple times, and we've had the pleasure of running into this person a few different times now in person. He's handsome. He's wonderful. He is hopefully excited to be here too. But Johannes from the Movie Mistrial podcast is here with us once again. Johannes, how are you doing?
I'm doing swell. Thanks for having me on. So yeah, I'm a blue because I figured I'm one of the of the shiz kids. Like
oh yeah,
there you go.
Love it.
Yeah. Jim, you're wearing blue too. So like
shiz. That's right. Shiz and blue and mismatched socks. That's how we roll.
Yes.
Shiz. Yeah.
We'll put a pin on that.
Well, Johannes, welcome back. So glad to have you. For any of our listeners who may not be familiar with your podcast, which, by the way, is fucking amazing. We enjoy it a lot here on our show. Tell our folks a little bit about your show. Why should they tune in? What have y'all got to offer in the land podcast? goodness.
A lot of bad faith arguments. It's the first thing we have. But so movie mistrial. The idea is that we take the IMDb top to bottom. That was a smart idea. And we put these movies up for trial. And what we argue for and against basically is their relevancy being on that list of the best movies ever. And the way it works is we flip a coin, so it's sort of random. Who gets for the movie and who gets to argue against it, and bad faith arguments ensue. But yeah, it's fun. Then there's very like Oppenheimer, Barbie. We talked about those two. But yeah, it's been a ride. Almost hitting 100 now. We're close to hitting the 100th film.
Ooh.
Wow, that's awesome. We're going to pause just for a second. The joy of doing it live. Y'all get to see how the sausage is made. Johannes, your mic seems to be cutting in and out quite a bit.
No.
I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe give it another go real quick. Say something if you don't mind.
Say something if you don't mind.
Yeah, that sounds a lot better. Cool. So,
Weird.
Johannes, if you're good, and Jim, if I know you'll probably make an editing note, but Johannes, if you want to just cut back just to talking about your show from the beginning, that way nobody misses the goodness you're about to drop.
Wonderful. So, Movie Mistrial, a podcast about the IMDb top 250 movies of all time. From top to bottom, we discuss the relevancy being on that list for all these wonderful films. And the way it works is we put them on trial. So me and my co-host, we flip a coin and this therefore kind of decide who argues for and against each of these films. And what ends up happening more often than not is good conversations, but also lots of bad faith arguments. So if you're interested in that, please give us a listen. We are everywhere.
Oh my goodness. Well, two quick notes. One, I just got a text message from a friend, my friend Thomas from Germany, who just sent a message that says, "Oh my God, Johannes is on Movie Bears podcast right now." So, so yay, Thomas, for for reaching out and saying hi. Second, I've got a question for you about these 92, it looks like, episodes that you've done so far. What's the one film that you feel that when you've put it up for trial that you were most surprised that you either ended up liking or disliking more than you originally thought going into that format?
Yeah, historically, there's one movie that we always bring up that is kind of the anti. It's like, why is this film so high? It's Life is Beautiful, which is in the 20s.
Okay. Yep.
Which just didn't work for either of us. And
Bring me on. I love that film.
we just, I don't know.
Roberto Benigni, right?
Yeah. And tone-wise, it just didn't work at all for us. And it's fairly high. It's in the 20s. So that's standard. Like, why is this film? Yesterday, last week we talked about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which I think is the way more interesting film. And that's hanging out in the 90s. So, that's always why is this film in the 20s when this great film is in the 90s? But, can't win them all, I guess.
You know what you're going to have to do when you eventually hit episode 250, right? You're through with your top 250. What do you do next? Well, episode 251, you go back and you rank all of those from 1 to 250. What is your order? I would listen to the hell out of that episode, because then we get to see Eternal Sunshine. Is it number 17? Is it number 53? Life is Beautiful. Oh my gosh, it dropped down to 185. Jeez.
Screw that film. Yeah, that or going to the bottom 250.
Oh, that's going to be hard. That's going to be hard to be on the support side of, but probably just as fun.
Well, Johannes, y'all have a fantastic show. You mentioned bad faith arguments. I think it's really interesting, for me at least, especially some of my favorite movies that are on that list, to hear you come at it from a different angle, where I'm like, I really love that fucking movie, but actually, yeah, that's kind of fair. That's good criticism right there. So thanks for always helping me to think a little bit differently. It's never a bad thing to question. right? Right.
That's what I'm
Wow.
here for today too, I guess.
Well, as I mentioned, we do have quite a big show. There's a lot for us to jump into. We've got a bunch of people who are hopping in with us. If you're in the live chat right now, hello, welcome. Glad to have y'all here. Feel free to say hello in the live chat and share your thoughts about this epic Glicked battle throwdown thing that's about to happen. We're going to kick things off by talking about Gladiator 2, and then we will go ahead and jump into Wicked. But listen, if you're not able to be on the live stream right now, completely okay. Not everyone is available at, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on a Tuesday night right before Thanksgiving. But what we do in life echoes in eternity. And I guess that includes the back catalog of our shows. So if you're finding this episode 2 weeks from now, 3 months from now, 8 years from now, I hope so. That'd be kind of great. Feel free to continue to comment. Drop us a line on Facebook, wherever. Let us know what you think about these films. We'd love to hear your thoughts too. So don't feel left out just because you're not on the live stream. But all of that said, Jim, Will, Johannes, how do y'all feel about jumping into our first movie conversation, that being Gladiator 2?
Let's hop aboard our Rhino and charge in.
For the glory of the podcast.
I'll powder my nose real quick.
Nice. I love it. Oh my gosh, Ben is in the chat with us. Hey, Ben. Ben says, haven't been able to see either yet, but love you guys. Ben, we're such a huge fan of you guys as well. Thanks for saying hi. Glad you're here. Welcome. All righty. Well, listen, we're going to chat about Gladiator a little differently. Normally, we give like spoiler-free thoughts on what we thought about the movie at a high level. Then we give you warning. We go into spoiler town. We open it wide up. The bulk of our conversation is probably going to be more so around Wicked, but we're definitely slotting in some time for Gladiator. We're just going to talk about that film spoiler-free, though. FYI, we're not going to go into spoilers for that one. So, Ben, if you haven't seen Gladiator 2 yet, and it sounds like that may be the case, no worries. We're not going to talk about anything that's probably not in the trailers. So, this is a safe space. We love you. We will not violate the tenets of that safe space. You're safe with us, we promise. In any event, here we go. Our conversation about Gladiator 2. All right. So there is a new Gladiator film out. I will tell you, Gladiator is my number 2 favorite movie ever. I've officially codified that in my list on Letterboxd. So I was super, super excited for a new Gladiator movie to come out. Of course, we're going to be talking about this one spoiler-free. But I would like to kind of open the floor and see kind of what y'all think about this new setup. So the newest trailer revealed this. This isn't a spoiler. The film follows Lucius, who is the little boy in the first movie. And he, for whatever reason, is now becoming a gladiator. And he's battling the Mandalorian for some reason. And there's sharks. And I don't even know what. And the lady from the first movie, Lucilla, his mother, is here. And there are twin inbred ? Emperors. How does that even work? Do we know? A lot's going down here, but Ridley Scott is back to helm this thing and return us to the world of Gladiator. So I'm just going to open this up for freeform conversation. Let it take us where it will, spoiler free, of course. Ben, I'm glad to hear that you are indeed entertained, hopefully more so as we get into the meat and potatoes here. But where y'all want to start?
I'll start. I mean, I wish I was more entertained by this movie. Look, this is a competent movie. Ridley Scott directed this as he did Gladiator, which is one of the films that really, with Alien and, really established and cemented his name as a great filmmaker, right? This was the first film was like 2000, I think it was. So it was a while ago. We're talking like a quarter century ago. And the film made a huge impact, I think, on the movie scene when it came out. It was a big deal. Russell Crowe was great. Built his career was largely built off this role as well. And I know, Brad, I know it's one of your favorite films of all time. We've watched it at least a couple times, maybe 2 or 3 times since you and I have been together. And I know how excited you were for this movie. Unfortunately, for me, this second movie, although, like I said, it's a competent movie, it's well made. I just think story-wise, it's too closely hewn to the original. It almost feels just like a retread of the original story, like way too much so. And maybe there isn't. I don't know. It almost makes you think like, isn't there anything more they could do with this like gladiator out for vengeance kind of story? But this movie really doesn't do much beyond what the first movie does, at least for me, except add the sharks and Denzel Washington with a heavy New York accent. That's about it.
Yeah. I went into this one maybe a little less excited. Gladiator, the original film, I always thought was a good film, but it never quite hit the same way as for me as it did for you, Brad. It was always just one of those films that I always appreciated that other people liked more than I did. So as we were getting closer to this one, I was actually thinking like, oh man, I don't know if I want to see this one. I don't know if I want to go to this. I've got it's November, it's December. There's so many other movies I need to catch up on right now. Is this really what I want to spend my time on? I think I ended up enjoying it more than I was expecting. So this movie, where it works best is that it does some kind of batshit crazy, wild, kind of goofy things from time to time. And when it does those things, it's a lot of fun. We get to see those in the trailers, so I can mention some of those here. You know, they flood the arena and fight each other on boats at one point. There are so many different fights and over-the-top sequences, and they're fun and interesting to look at. Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Denzel Washington, Joseph Quinn they were all really good in this. I think I've landed in a similar spot though, in that I don't know that the story by the end of the day, once I got through all of the twists and turns and all of the character motivations and all of the setups for this action piece, I don't know that I really cared. I think that's the thing. I was entertained, but I don't know that I really cared about what I was being entertained by. So this is one of those films that I enjoyed the act of watching, but I will probably, like, in 2 months' time, you'll mention Gladiator 2 to me, and I'll go like, oh, yeah, that's right. We watched that. This is one of those, you know, ultimately in one eye and out the other, which is damning with faint praise. If you're looking for something like this on the big screen, it does scratch that itch, so it's an okay watch. But okay watches are hard when you've got bigger spectacle films out in theaters right now, which we'll talk about probably in a few minutes, and also bigger, more emotional stories that are out right now. I would recommend going and watching A Real Pain, which is like a much better film at sort of capturing like story and character. And it's like right there in the same Cineplex for a lot of people. So I don't know. Decent film, but decent's the best I can give it.
Did you just backdoor plug something, Will?
I did, because my thought process is like, look, if this movie has to compete with everything else that's out right now, right? Like, it's not just the Glicked part of it. It's competing with everything. And if it can't at least hold its own in that arena, it's dead on arrival. So unfortunately, this is a good, well-trained gladiator with a good sword who rushes out there, and then like 5 other movies come up and just start sticking spears in him, you know? Nice try, film, but you didn't quite live to the end.
Oh, good visual. Johannes, how about you? Where are your thoughts on this one? I'm so curious.
I left and I was like, why is this a thing? I second what Will was saying. I think when it goes into spectacle, there's some strengths there. It's cool. I think the execution of the spectacle is a little challenging. Whenever there's animals involved, it's really, really bad. I think where Gladiator 1 really shined was we cared for Russell Crowe's character. And the reason is because we spent a lot of time understanding who he is. And none of that happens in this film. Like, it's really hard to really care for this dude. Because everything is kind of rushed and fast, and there's a lot of just circumstance, and stuff happens for plot reasons, and it's a little frustrating for me. Where it was kind of a frustrating watch. I still don't fully understand how Romans were able to get 5 great white sharks into an arena, but maybe that's Gladiator 3.
You're overthinking it, Johannes. You're totally overthinking it.
Listen, Ridley Scott said that Romans had scouting parties that saw sharks. So, they
had monkey dogs. So like
baboons. It was supposed to be baboons, I guess.
Yeah, they were supposed to be baboons. Yeah, weirdest looking baboons.
Yeah,
they didn't look
terrible.
They didn't look great, did they? And what's interesting about that is there were actually reports of like baboons and rhinos being used in these Roman Colosseums, but there were no reports of like people riding rhinos like mounts, or like the baboons being like sort of like these baboon dog hybrids, or like we got here. They
from
looked,
hell.
They looked like the way I imagined the I forget the name
hellhound?
of them, but those beasts in the Hunger Games that
right,
those those dog people that showed up in the thing.
Right.
Anyways, that's they look like they would have been more fitting there, and also I guess in the years those film came out, from the way they looked.
Well, the funny part for me is our friend Kevin went to see this with us, and so the night before we saw it, Jim, Kevin, and I watched the first Gladiator again. And it mystifies me how the CGI tigers in the first Gladiator movie looked more realistic and like part of the world than these like baboons and sharks and other CGI things that they incorporated did. And, I'm just wondering how 24 years later, the CGI looks worse, right? I mean, the rest of the cinematography is fucking beautiful. It's great. But yeah, that didn't really work so well for me. And I think there's a lot of things about this movie, unfortunately, that didn't work very well for me. I think Paul Mescal gave a great performance. Loved Denzel Washington, but Jim, you mentioned his like strong New York accent.
Yeah, like what fucking movie did he think he was in?
Yeah,
it was like he was in another New York crime movie. And people were saying, "Oh, well, that's just Denzel. That's the way he plays." I'm like, "Well, that's cool, but he's a fucking actor." Like,
I know.
I think it took me out of the movie the first few times he talked. I loved Denzel. I loved his character in this movie. I thought his character was really strong, but man, when the believability goes out the window and he talks like he just stepped out of a cab in New York, like it's weird.
Yeah,
I kind of felt like he was just strongest though out of all of them, like, for some reason. Like
nothing to do with his accent, right? Nothing to do with his accent.
Like he showed up and he understood the assignment in a way, right? So
right, it's definitely unfortunate, as a period piece. Like, I'm not expecting Denzel Washington to like, be the most authentic Roman ever, but like, at least try.
But everybody else is trying.
Right, but there's a lot about this film. Yes, I love the first one immensely, but I also came into this one knowing like it's 25 years later. Ridley Scott has made a lot of other films between that one and this one. He's coming back to this world. Like, maybe give a little grace, see what he can do, try to keep my expectations low. But I think even with lowered expectations, I was just let down a lot by this film. Johannes, you mentioned like how much we know about the Maximus character in the first film and how that leads to us kind of caring about him and what's going on. I would argue ostensibly we know a lot about Lucius too. Like, we know who he was in the first movie. We know his relationship to characters, but at the same time, I didn't feel any depth there at all. Like, even as the plot unspools and we find out more about like him and his journey, and I just never really felt that connected to the character. So like, the fights were cool. All the big beefy guys and their hairy chests, those were definitely cool. I enjoyed those too.
More of that.
There really wasn't. Yeah, but there really wasn't too much else there for me. And I wanted to go to one of the comments in the live chat. From Josh, who says, I'm interested in how the music score went. My favorite composer was given the reins to take on Hans Zimmer's original. For me at least, I was really disappointed in the music of this film. Not that it had to be Hans Zimmer, although certainly we got some of the Hans Zimmer score in here. The 98% that was like new stuff was really generic and just didn't strike me. Like, I don't know. It was just kind of blah for me. How about for you guys?
Yeah, there was nothing that stood out to me.
Yeah,
Like,
nothing stood out. And in a movie where the most of the story doesn't stand out and grab you, the score is not grabbing you either. That's a bad combination. I want to get back to what Johannes said also. I think the stakes in this movie were poorly set up. Like what is it? Paul Mescal, I thought did a wonderful job as the lead character here. As an actor, I love Paul Mescal, but the character itself, I don't think we cared. Right, the beginning of the movie sets up a relationship that he has. I'm not going to go into too much here.
Yeah, we'll avoid spoilers, of course.
Sets up a relationship, and then something happens, and I think we're supposed to care a lot more than we did about what sets him on his path. To me, it's not even a tenth as strong as what happened in the first movie. Somehow, some way. So I didn't really. I'm like, okay, he's gonna go fight all these gladiator battles, and we know he's going to win most of them, right? And maybe even all the way to the end. But I don't know. I just didn't care so much about the character. They didn't give me much to care about. I actually hated some other characters more than I liked him. You know what I mean? Like some of the let's just say some of the people in power that he was fighting against.
Yeah,
were kind of over the top. Kind of crazy. I think, Will, that goes a little to what you were talking about. But we've seen that before too. We've seen that even in like Game of Thrones. Like we've seen the crazy king and stuff like that. But
well, you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel. You just have to execute well, right? Because this film really had. So it's got a pedigree behind it, right? So we've got this film that came out in 2000 and was nominated for 10 Oscars, winning 5, including Best Picture, Best Actor, some above the line awards, right? So when you create the sequel to that, you've got 2 real routes that you can go. You can say, we're going to keep this as a pedigree film, and so we're really going to strive for going for that Oscar push, building that really deep dramatic story and all the different things that you want. Or you can say, look, that's not what the sequel is. We're just going to have fun with this one, which is totally acceptable and okay. Where this movie succeeds best is when it lands in either of those 2 spots. I think Paul Mescal, even though the character itself and the script wasn't strong enough to give us what we wanted, I think he acted the hell out of what he was given, right? And so I do feel that we got a lot out of him, even though the character really didn't give him much to play with. When we got to the Twin Emperors, and they're just bonkers and over the top and from a completely different movie, like they felt like they were like some of the villains from what was that movie, Jupiter Ascending, which was and I loved that. I loved that for them. But so much of the movie tried to kind of land in between those 2 things. Right. And when you don't commit, you just sort of land in boring territory. So I really wanted them to pick a lane and live in it. As it is, we might see a couple of below the line kind of sneak in nominations, just because these types of films, especially for things like costuming, usually find their way in. And Denzel Washington is one of those people who kind of lives in Meryl Streep territory, in that if his category doesn't fill out, I can see him sneaking in for supporting actor as a nomination. But it won't necessarily be like a highlight of his career nomination, if so, which is, again, disappointing. If you're going to piggyback off of the name and the goodwill of something, you want it to be good. You want it to be energetic. You want it to be fun. You want it to take the original and move it forward in some way, shape, or form.
Well,
So-
and that's an interesting kind of note to hit here, Will, because Thomas Hacker in the chat, hey Thomas, welcome, says, I find it so weird to make a sequel after such a long time. And kind of thinking along those lines, it's like at the end of the first movie, Maximus has died. Ostensibly, like, the power is being given back to the people in the Senate. Rome is to be a republic again. We're getting this sequel now 25 years later, but the trailers totally give away that, like, no, Rome still has an emperor. It's two emperors, in fact, and crazy batshit stuff is still happening with these emperors anyway. So, like, does it invalidate the first movie in some ways? I kind of feel like yes. Like to me, in like my headcanon continuity now, it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't even want to like think of two as like a real continuation of that story, because especially, Thomas, to your point, 25 years later, it's not really doing anything new or interesting with it. It's just like, oh, okay, well, let's have batshit crazy emperor stuff happening again. Oh, and let's have a guy fighting his way through the gladiator ranks to battle it again. Jim, to your point, it just, I don't know. It didn't really take off for me.
I mean, if I just focus on that point, in the emperors in this one versus the emperor in the first one, Joaquin wasn't really playing like an over the top crazy person, more like beneath the surface, like, okay, this guy's got serious problems and it's gonna be an issue later on. I found that way more compelling than just these, like, just unpredictable off the. I mean, that's fun for a little while. You kind of wish there was a character like the Mountain from Game of Thrones. It would just crush their skulls together. But no, that's not a spoiler. That did not happen. But that's what we were wishing for the whole movie, because they were total brats.
I think the problem with this is, in a way, is it's kind of the Force Awakens for the Gladiator franchise, where it's not. It's very similar to the first one, with a little tweaks. It looks. I think the Force Awakens looks a lot better, but like, the story is familiar enough that you're supposed to feel comfortable and kind of understand. Okay, I know this, and like a lot of the story beats are very similar, right? Like, there's changes, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a very familiar film. Let's put it that way. But I think where Gladiator 1 just shines is in the character development, and this is just not hitting that.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
a problem.
Totally agree, Johannes. Well, we've had some really great discussion on this film, and I think, not going into spoilers, you were a little hamstrung, right, in terms of how deep we can go in the conversation. And I know we wanted to devote, especially with four of us, a lot of time to Wicked. Are there any final thoughts on Gladiator 2 before we go ahead and make that jump over to our next contender in the Glicked showdown?
Yeah, I'm just not convinced that Gladiator 2 was a bounce back for Ridley Scott after Napoleon. I just don't think it was a super strong bounce back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Napoleon landed flat. I think this one is maybe a little bit better, but certainly not what we might expect from Ridley Scott.
That's the thing. This is a lowercase g, lowercase ud good movie. And that's hard when there are much better, like, great movies that are out at the same time, or more interesting bad movies out at the same time. It's that, there's a 1-star film is honestly more interesting to me than a 2.5-star film almost any day of the week.
I think it's a perfect film for streaming. Like,
yes.
There you go.
And that's sad, right? In a way, it's kind of sad. But I think on the smaller screen, the bad effects will probably not show up as badly.
I'll just say this as my final thought. Gladiator was the first DVD I ever bought. I will not be buying the DVD for Gladiator 2.
Nor the
Side
soundtrack.
note, mine too.
Nor the
actually. Interesting.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Only mine was it wasn't the first DVD I ever watched because I when I purchased it, they used to put those little they were like these little strips inside of the cases that were
Oh,
like
the anti-theft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For some reason, mine was on the disc itself. So you can't play it at this point because it's got this giant strip on the disc. I think another one I got I got The Matrix right after it. So that's the first one I got to watch.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
But yeah, same first movie.
Wow. That's so funny. We're like cosmically linked, Will. It's totally a thing. Like Transformers and this and so many other things.
It's if we went to a magical academy, I think we'd be roommates.
We probably would be. Yeah. We might drive each other crazy though, like full time living together, but I don't know. We might be able to figure it out.
What is this feeling? Oh, it's a segue.
Yeah. What, Jim? Go ahead.
Oh, nothing. I just don't want. I don't know if I want to. This movie, talking about this movie, reminded me of another movie we watched years and years and years ago. It wasn't the same kind of a Gladiator movie, but it's adjacent to that. Pompeii. You remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember Pompeii?
I do.
Yeah.
There is a locked door inside of my brain that's behind a vault, that's behind like a labyrinth where the memory of that movie exists.
Yeah.
And just now you led me to it. I forgot Pompeii existed as a film literally until this moment.
I'll never forget.
Gladiator 2 probably in 10 years.
We did a press screening for Pompeii and they told us that we could invite like 40 people with us. And we're like, whoa, okay. So we put it out to our local bear group. So, we brought like 38 bears with us. And walking out of that movie, everyone was like, we had to like put our phones in a bin to watch that. They're worried about us taking videos and sharing that. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, I think we have bigger and better fish to fry. So get out your magic wands, get out your bubbles, get out your brooms. Let's hand by hand move along to the merry land of Oz and talk a little bit about a film called Wicked.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
All right, Will. I know that you happen to be a very big fan of Wicked. So when we were talking about like who's going to introduce this, my thought immediately went to William Lindis. And Will, I appreciate you confirming, validifying that thinking. Thank you for being up for kicking this movie conversation off. Johannes, you've got a green light on. You were ready to talk about Wicked. I noticed.
I was ready.
It's awesome. It looks amazing. It's so good. And Jim, you're wearing blue for Shiz University. So like we are pink, green light, blue shirts. I think our bases are covered. We're ready to talk about this film. Will, of course, we're going to keep this spoiler free just for our initial round of like what we thought. And then we'll open things up to spoilers, but spoiler free. Set this one up for us, especially, kind of knowing there are people out there who have probably heard of the musical. Maybe they haven't had access to it. This might be their first time. What the fuck is Wicked? And should people see it? What did you think?
Yeah, so Wicked is an adaptation of an adaptation of an adaptation. So back starting in the mid-90s, an author named Gregory Maguire created this series of books, the Wicked series, starting with the book Wicked, which were sort of a dark side history look at the origins of the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz, as well as some of the other supporting characters as that book series continues. Shortly after the book was made, they already started shopping the rights to make it a film. And during the process of figuring out what that film would look like, there was something missing, and they reached out to a few different people, one of which was Broadway composer Stephen Schwartz, who said it needs music and it needs to be on Broadway. And that's what they did with it. So starting in 2003, Wicked the musical opened. It's now been running for 20 years, including national tours. It's been, of course, on Broadway, since right after its San Francisco premiere, then goes to Broadway, and then it's there till today. But national tours, international tours. Australia has an Elphaba. The East End has its own Elphaba. There's Elphabas all over the world. And of course, now we have that adapted into a film, which was where it was originally slated to be, directed by John Chu, who gave us Crazy Rich Asians and In the Heights a few years ago, and starring Ariana Grande and Cynthia Riva as Galinda and Elphaba, respectively. This is a musical film. This is also part one of a two-part series, things that you should know. The play itself is built into 2 acts, and so this film is act 1, meaning that you'll have to come back and watch the second one when that one comes out here, in the not too distant future. I really loved this movie. Wicked's been important to me for a long time. Just to sort of start on that, it's been important to me for a long time for a lot of reasons. For starters, I'm a theater kid, right? And so when you're a theater kid, you go to cast parties. And when you go to cast parties, someone puts on whatever the musical du jour is, and you act like an asshole and you sing it really loud while everyone else is trying to just enjoy like a normal ass party. And I was a theater kid in kind of the in college, kind of in that era of the early aughts, which is when Wicked first came out, and it was the hot new thing. So this was one of the soundtracks we got drunk to and sang. It's also my first husband. It was his favorite musical, to the point where we saw it several times. And even at his funeral, when he passed a few years ago, we kind of made a little like shrine at the viewing that was like some of his favorite things, and it was all Wicked stuff, like this giant snow globe, this like book from when we saw it in like 2006 or so. Wow. Wicked's always been important to me. So it was important to me that they got this movie right, and they did. The songs are performed really well. There's this practical look to the sets that is just so nice, and even if some of the CG on a couple of the spots is a little dodgy, most of it is pretty darn effective, because it blends those practical elements together. Performances are great. Direction are great. I hate musicals where they don't capture like just the full visual language. And here you've got people flipping through hallways and choreography across different scenes. And it's what I needed to see on screen. I can maybe ding it very slightly in that I think the color grading let me down just a bit, in that there are parts where they're going for realism. It kind of has this dusty look to it at times, when I really wanted some of the colors cranked a bit.
To pop.
It's a very small criticism against what is otherwise a really damn good musical adaptation. I'm looking forward to seeing this many, many, many more times, both in theaters and at home. And I think that a lot of people who are maybe holding their breath on whether or not this would be good, relax. It's good. Go see it. Have fun. It's spectacle on screen the way spectacles should be.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for setting that up and sharing your initial thoughts. While we were chatting, Thomas came into the live chat. He says, "Howdy, guys. I made it, and I saw the movie you're doing today. Thomas, figured you'd see Wicked. Glad you made it in time for the Wicked conversation." All right, Jim, let's have you go next, if you don't mind, Mr. Shiz.
Yeah.
What did you think
Sure.
of Wicked? How did it hit?
Yeah, I guess going in, of course, we are big fans of the musical, big fans of the soundtrack. I read the book several years ago. I like the book also. The musical and the book are totally different. Well, I'll say totally different. Definitely different flavors of the same story, with different aspects being brought out in the book that I really appreciate. And we'll talk about some of those and how they maybe show up in this movie version. But I think the whole time when we were hearing that there was a movie, I was like, oh, how are they going to do this? a lot of times musical stage adaptations to film don't work out so great. I'm a little bit afraid. I hope this is good. Hope this is good. And lo and behold, we discover that they really kind of nailed it with this movie. I think. I mean, it's it's a difficult thing, but I think they brought it to the screen in probably the best way possible that they could. And again, they're adapting the musical stage play into this film. Will, you talked about how the sets and stuff were set up. It's to me, it almost seemed like the movie kind of hit both worlds. Like it looked like you would imagine like a real Aussian, you know, universe would be, like in a movie outside of the stage, but it also had very stagey elements too, which actually worked because, you know, they brought us back to the, you know, the stage musical that we all like. The songs are all great. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the songs, and I think for the most part, I think they're all great. The actors, you know, Cynthia and Ariana are great in here as the two leads. The chemistry works really well between them and the characters. Yeah, I loved it, in short. And there's a lot more to talk about, but I'll give up some time for you guys to talk.
All right. We're at 2 out of 4. Let's see how our third comes down. Johannes from the Movie Mistrial podcast. What did you think of Wicked?
I feel like I need to stretch now. I love the show. Let me say that. I love the show. To the point, I wrote 10 papers about the show when I was in university. Like I really like the show. The film, I'm a little struggling a little bit. I would like to the point where it kind of annoyed me here and there. But mainly around the changes that they did that to me changed meaning, and I think that is always a little rough when something like it's like the Broadway show's crafted with a lot of purpose and meaning behind it, and there's a lot of little things that are have that, and I think they took a bunch of that out, and that really annoyed me to a point. I'm happy to go more into spoiler, and it gets really nerdy, but it's like, and there were the things where I'm like, I wish they hadn't done that. Like technically, it's a great film. It sounds good. I personally would have loved a little more oomph from the orchestra and like the orchestrations, but it sounds great. I think the way it's sung is great. Like it's cool to see it realized in a different kind of visual form with a little different like visual interest. I think there's a lot there that it is very interesting, but if you're kind of a purist of the show, I guess there may be a little disappointment there.
Well, Johannes, I appreciate you kind of speaking to that a little bit. And Jim and I were talking before the show, and we were like, I hope it's not a total love fest. Like, I hope there are things, right, that we can talk about that aren't just like gushing over Wicked. So it's really cool to hear your perspective. And kind of back to my comment earlier, you were talking about like bad faith arguments and things like that from your show, which I disagree with. But it's great to kind of come at this with a critical eye too, right? Like, I think sometimes we get wrapped up in like our love for the musical and, oh my God, we're so excited about a movie, but like, you kind of got to judge it as its like own thing too. And with it being a different medium, that's going to bring different angles, right, than we might normally encounter. So I love that you bring that up. For me, I really love the movie. I gave it 5 stars on Letterboxd. There's my official Letterboxd review or rating, I guess. But I recognize, especially after seeing it a second time last night, we saw it Wednesday of last week and then again last night. So that's what, like 5 days in between. I'm not going to adjust my rating down because my thing is like the rating is what it is when I initially reviewed it. But I picked out a couple things, Johannes, and I'm jazzed to get into spoilers and kind of pick your brain and see where you were at. But I think for me too, there were a couple things I noticed this second time that I didn't the first time, that I was kind of like, maybe that didn't work quite as well for me. But by and large, I loved this a ton. I will say, going in, y'all, I was super worried about Ariana Grande. I've listened to some of her music. It's not for me. And that's totally okay. Not every artist needs to be for me. I was hoping that the music, though, like Popular, for instance, that's Glenda's big song. I was really hoping that they didn't like try to like hip hopify it or like make it more like Ariana Grande like pop version. And so I was so fucking happy that like Popular is just Popular. Like it is the song, like from the musical. In fact, I was reading an interview today where Ariana Grande was saying that they had asked her if they wanted to make it a little more like hip hoppy kind of, and she was like, no, absolutely not. You can't. Like, I want to be Glinda, not Ariana Grande playing Glinda. And I think mission fucking accomplished. There's so much great stuff about this. I think Cynthia did a great job too in her performance as Elphaba. But for me, Ariana Grande completely stole the show as Glinda. That's why I'm wearing a pink shirt tonight and not a green shirt. Still love them both. Think they both did an amazing job. But Ariana, I think, just kind of edged it out for me. I think to David Massey's question in the live chat, I'll put that on screen. He says, hey guys, if you don't know and love Wicked already, the books, soundtrack, musical, etc., would you still recommend this film? And David, I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine over the weekend. I went to high school with her, and she still lives in the small rural town that we're all from. And I mean, you got to drive like 2 hours if you want to see like a major musical production. So, you know, when Wicked has been around, it's like, you know, a 3-hour drive to Chicago or 2-hour drive to Grand Rapids. So she just hasn't had easy access. She never saw it, but she liked The Wizard of Oz growing up. And she's like, should I see this? Because like it's in a cinema like 30 minutes away. Is it worth 30 minutes of time and like the gas to get there? Especially when the price of eggs is going up so much. I was like, actually, yes. Like, this is worth it, even if you haven't had any exposure to Wicked before, especially if you know, haven't read the book, because the book is so different from the musical. And thank God it is. Although it's weird. I went back to start reading the book again on the Kindle app, and it's using artwork from the movie. So like kids are gonna see that and be like, oh my God, it's Wicked the musical. But like, it's fucking not. It is super different, super violent, very graphic, a lot of graphic sex in it. It's weird, whatever. I'm glad it's not that. But David, to your question, my friend said it was absolutely worth the 30-minute drive and the cost of going out there. And she is like devouring everything Wicked now. Like she has just been obsessed all weekend. So I'll just share that anecdote, and maybe that's helpful. But this is a big recommend from me. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're only coming at it knowing the Wizard of Oz from 1938, the film, you know, this movie will open up a world for you that you just didn't know existed behind the story. Just like the musical did for many of us, right? It's like, oh my God, like what we see on the surface in The Wizard of Oz is, you know, we thought that was it, but there's a lot more to these characters. There's a lot more to this story, and it's got some pretty cool. I mean, if you like musicals, right? I think the songs in Wicked are great. I mean, they're fantastic sing-along songs. They have meaning. They fold into the storyline very well. So, yes, I think you can see either the stage play or this movie and have that world opened up for you. I think it's an awesome experience. I can remember the first time I saw the musical being like astounded that somebody had the, you know, and of course the author of the book, but I mean that somebody was able to take that original story and kind of turn it into this other, totally expand the world. Like this, and then also form it into a digestible musical stage production. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, there's a couple of answers I'd give to that too, because unfortunately, like, I can't unring that bell, right? Like, I can't erase from my brain 20 years of knowing this material, so I can't answer it honestly. But what I can do to sort of guide someone towards making that decision for themselves is sort of refer them to two things maybe before they go see the movie. One, there is a pretty darn good behind the scenes special on Disney Plus where they have the it's hosted by Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo on the set, using footage that they filmed all the way through, and with all the guest stars are the different other actors or John Chu kind of like stopping by and talking to them. And it's, you know, it's a marketing puff piece for it, but it's joyful and it's energetic, and they talk about the music and the origins of the music and the costumes and the makeup and the sets and why they do all that stuff. So that's a good thing to watch first. I watched it over the weekend and was like, yeah, I'm a little more excited for the movie now because I'd seen it beforehand.
Does it give away any plot points though, Will?
Not anything that isn't like, no, nothing that's like spoilery. It, you know, you see moments from some of the songs, and they did a behind the, like, it was the world premiere of the What Is This Feeling played. Like they played that whole clip at the very end of it as a preview. But no, it's, yeah, that wouldn't give away anything. The other thing, go on YouTube and search, and trust me on this verbiage.
Here we go.
Wicked slime tutorial. So in the world of musicals, slime tutorial is just sort of like a way that people will put that so it doesn't get taken off of YouTube. I don't fully know how it works, but I've watched a lot of like camcorder recordings of musicals that didn't have things. So you can go and find like actual spots from the play and watch that and say, hey, this is for me or this is not. But this is a phenomenon that has captured a lot of people's hearts and kind of quickly in the world of musicals. So this film it obviously changes and adapts things, but the music is fairly true to the overall kind of structure of the music in the musical, and the major plot beats are fairly true. So I think you can trust yourself saying like, man, like all these people love it, I should at least give it a shot. So, you know, again, I can't say for sure because I already knew it before I went in, but those are a couple of things that might help someone make that decision.
Well, David says that you have officially, guys, convinced him to put Wicked above Gladiator 2 on his list of things to see. So, David, glad we were able to maybe help. He does have one last question, though. Is there any connection to the Baum books? Frank L. Baum, slime tutorial is awesome. Yeah, even look for Green Slime Tutorial. I've seen him show up under that, too. But in no way are we promoting filming things that shouldn't be filmed and breaking agreements, but it's out there. So just FYI, in terms of a connection to the book, real quick lightning round. Has anyone read the original Wizard of Oz books?
There's one obvious connection, and that's the main character's name, you know, from L.F. Baum to Elphaba.
Right. Yeah. Elphaba.
Yeah. And aside from that, you know, there are some connection points in as they sort of flesh out sort of like the geography of the world, but it's much more beholden to the film than it is to the book. You know, like that's where the DNA.
It's more beholden to the first film, is what you're talking about.
Right.
The Baum
Wizard
books,
of Oz.
Right.
The Baum books and the first film kind of go together, right? And then the musical and this film go together.
Well, yes, but also, I mean, the story structure. If you're looking at, you know, the Wizard of Oz books and then the, you know, Judy Garland Wizard of Oz movie, that's an adaptation that made very specific choices, right? This Wicked uses as the trunk of its tree the Garland movie more so than the Baum books, you know. So if you're a fan of like kind of the Technicolor Wizard of Oz, that's more of, I think, kind of the thing that you'd be looking for here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, real quick, the very handsome and delectable George is in the live chat and says, hey, booty full bears. We got some hot booties on this show for sure. But George, speaking of hot booties, welcome. Good to see you too. Glad to have you here. Johannes, Jim, Will, are we ready to get into spoiler talk? Because I feel like there's some wild horses we need to set free.
I 100% am. I know, Johannes, you had some things that you wanted to bring up and sort of some of the kind of the finer details, and I'm absolutely dying to kind of to dive into that. So yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear about those things, Johannes. I could melt. So I'm there too.
Well, I hope you're happy.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take things into spoiler territory officially. We are following whatever color of brick road leads to spoiler land. I don't think it's yellow because we know that goes to Emerald City. Maybe it's blue. I don't know, pink, whatever.
I don't know. I don't know which brick we're using for the hanky code on this show.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
But if you have not yet seen Wicked Part 1, this is your chance to step away, go see the movie, and come on back for our spoiler section after you have done so. Unless, of course, you don't care about spoilers. That's completely up to you. But if you continue to listen, you consent. We are not at fault for, destroying your virginal innocence. So just FYI there. But spoilers are officially fair game. And Johannes, if you don't mind, I think you're a great place to start here. What were maybe some of those things that like stood out to you that maybe weren't as wicked awesome?
Irksome differences.
Yeah. The first thing that the show is, if you know the Broadway show, it's kind of a cycle, right? It starts how it ends, and it's upon the actress of Glinda to kind of find that balance in a kind of good way of like dancing on the fine needle of, I'm not really happy that this person is dead because she was my friend and I kind of cared for her, but I also need to sell that I am. And I feel like it is a weird choice to give her the torch to flame the effigy, which is a cool visual, and I think that's like a lot of things like that it gets right, because that effigy is kind of mimicking what you see in the show. So there's like a lot of cool things going on, right? But it's like I was missing that, but that's a super minor thing. I like the first real thing that I noticed was when they get to Shiz, and that's where the blue t-shirts and all come in. Because again, I wrote a term paper on costumes and the way the costumes tell a story, especially Elphaba's costumes tell a story in the show. And the way they do it in the Broadway show is all the students at Shiz have blue and white, a combination of blue and white. Very individual, which is kind of cool. Everybody has their own little like outfit, but it's all a combination of blue and white. Glinda is all white. Elphaba is all blue, to kind of show the the polar opposites of everything. I think where I just kind of got really annoyed is that she is, from the beginning, she has this very iconic black puffy shoulder dress. Again, I said it's going to be nerdy, but it's like it's setting up
a frock.
Well, yeah. It's basically setting up the second act already, which is not earned yet, and that really annoyed me for some reason, because I was like, you're missing the meaning of how it is set up in the first show. They also changed why she's there to begin with, which I don't know why that needed to happen, but it's like, for some reason that irked me, because it's such a weird thing to lose, because it just changes the meaning. It changes the meaning why she's there. It changes the meaning how she fits in, and it changes kind of the meaning, like as it kind of progresses, she loses more layers of the blue, and then she gets a white jacket, so she's kind of fitting in more, right? So it's like we lose that storytelling too close, which really irked me. The other thing that I noticed, they changed a moment in Popular when she gets that pink brooch, and it's like, oh, pink goes good with green. In the musical, the underlying music is "I'm Not That Girl," and here it's "For Good," which is, we don't have any reference to that at all yet, so we don't even know what that means.
No,
but it changes the meaning so much, and it annoyed me so much, because it's like, why?
We get "For Good." We get little vignettes of For Good several times in this movie, I think.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I noticed it.
And those
there.
of us who obviously know For Good, which is one of my favorite songs, are like, oh shit, that's For Good. I don't know, but like you said, I don't know if it belongs there or it doesn't belong there. I
Right.
don't know what kind of mood it's trying to set.
Well,
The-
the For Good motif plays in the dance scene too. When Glenda like comes out to dance with Elphaba, they play a little snippet of it. And Johannes, I had the same thought. I'm like, wait, oh, like this isn't even going to be in here until the next movie. I guess if you're watching them both back to back, then it's fine, right? But like, it's going to be a year till people like David who haven't seen the musical yet, right, are going to be able to watch them back to back and see how they connect. And so it's kind of a weird choice for sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of your nitpicks on those. I had the same when she threw the torch at the effigy. All I could think was like, damn girl, you're committing to the bit right out of the gate. That was a little much. And the costuming too, I noticed a reversion of kind of one thing that I was expecting, and that's there's a spot, I believe it's during Dancing Through Life, right when Elphaba, she's not really doing much in that scene aside from that part where she kind of stands up and says like, "Ugh, I'm going to study outside," or whatever she says there. But she's wearing sort of like a blue sort of shiz outfit with, it's still Elphaba, but like it's much more kind of in line with shiz. And I almost feel like you could have like not directly swapped those two outfits, but like, like we could have seen maybe her incorporating more and more of those like dark elements as she's fitting less in, and then back to the shiz stuff when she's fitting in again after popular, whatever it is. I think there was a conscious decision on the filmmaker and the costumers part to really go for looks that felt more iconic than necessarily felt like they were right in any moment of the shot, which has its pros and its cons, because the pro that they get is basically any shot from this movie can then be used to go into the trailer and sell this movie, right? Or to put on a lunchbox, or to put on a lunchbox, or to put on a thermos. I won't bring out my thermos. Or to put on a book, or to put on a barrette, or to put on
a phone case.
Especially since we don't have the second movie yet, so we don't get to have like fully Wicked Witch of the West-ified Elphaba yet. I think really where that falls down for me is more an issue with the 2-act 2-film structure than anything else. I think that's if we kind of trace some of that back, I think that's probably the cause for a lot of those decisions.
I think there's just this film is setting up a lot that is lost if you don't know where it's leading. Right? There are bridges you crossed you didn't know you crossed, right?
Until you cross them.
Until you cross. We haven't crossed those bridges yet, but it's like, again, it's I understand it's super nitpicky, but it's just like, I feel like artistic license is all good, and there's a lot that is cool here, right? There's a lot that's riffing kind of on kind of similar ideas as, and that's all great. But I think when it starts to change meaning, that's just odd to me, and it's not necessarily really earned. I don't know. We don't know where
I'm going to nitpick on one thing that my husband tells me that may not be the way I've experienced it, but did anybody
hold on. I just want to clarify. I didn't say you were wrong or that like
no, I didn't say that.
Misreading it. I just want to clarify so everybody knows.
We had some spirited conversation about the movie after the movie.
On the drive home, Jim opened his mouth and Brad said, "No, that was a wrong opinion, bad opinion." Is that the way it went, Jim?
I think "shut the fuck up" may have been in there.
You were not in the car, maybe. Will.
I was not in the car. I was.
But I will.
Piero and I were riding on horseback through the woods.
Kind of in the same vein as Johannes's issues with some of the choices. Do you guys feel like I did that they leaned a little too heavy into the foreshadowing of the green guy at the beginning being the father of
Whoa, 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 whoa,
yeah,
whoa, whoa,
what?
whoa,
We're in
whoa, whoa, whoa,
spoilers,
whoa,
right?
whoa, whoa. No. We're in spoilers for Wicked Part 1.
Yeah.
So Wicked Part 2 is not out yet. There may be people who haven't seen the musical who don't know anything about Wicked Part 2. So I actually thought you were talking about the dance scene, not this aspect.
Nah,
So
no.
To unspoilerly answer that though, they do similar in the musical.
Yeah.
Like that's they with the way it's blocked and the way it's told.
Even this, like when he sings a song about wanting, the wizard at one point in part 1 sings a song about here's what I want. Here's what I want.
I think we should be really, really careful, guys.
The song lyrics that the wizard sings in this match what he sings in the play. Anytime the wizard sings.
Why? I need to see.
Love y'all, but I think we should leave it at that. On this,
go on
this
to the next topic.
I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to shut you down badly. Okay.
Well, there was a second. I know there was a second point, Brad, that you thought Jim was talking about.
Oh yeah, Jim, you were talking about like the dance scene when like all the music drops away and Elphaba's like doing her silly weirdo dance. And then Glenda comes out and like I'm bawling during that scene, but you're looking around with this hawkish look like what the fuck? And I think you thought there was a disconnect there or something. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I didn't feel it. I don't think I felt it. And we saw it twice and I don't know. Certainly Elphaba shows up. She's been humiliated. She wants to just be bold and put herself out there and say fuck you to everybody. But it seemed like I don't remember the musical enough to remember how that scene played out in the stage play, but it just didn't come across. I don't know. It didn't seem to land for me as it maybe it wanted to. It seemed very weird. There was a lot of weird movements, and I'm like, okay, is there an origin to what she's doing? Like, did she just make it up on the spot? Like, I wasn't sure. I kept asking myself those questions.
It's playing out very similar in the stage play. I think it's a little snappier. I think the dance is not as weird, but it's hitting all the same beats basically. So story wise, it's all the same.
Okay. Well,
yeah, I think it was
the stage play.
I think it was slowed down more here because you need that scene to have more like spots for sort of like close-ups and facial reactions and audience reactions that need to happen in isolation from one another. Whereas on a Broadway play, stage, you're watching all of that as one sort of like staged plateau, right? Or tableau, sorry, one stage tableau. So, yeah, I think it hit a little closer to me than Brad. I wasn't bawling. And I did think it was a little wacky, but also I thought, this is a wacky world. So like I was able to buy into it pretty quickly, right?
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, just like being able to just see, and again, it comes back to Ariana Grande for me. I think she did a killer job with her performance in this. I've read and seen a lot of what she did here. This is a girl who's been acting since she was a kid, so she's not new to performing. This is a girl who's been singing since she's a kid, so she's not new to producing music. She produced a no skip album earlier this year, which is called Eternal Sunshine. And just Johannes, you threw me for a loop earlier when you mentioned Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, because for a minute there, I had Ariana on the brain and thought like, wait, the movie. Yeah. Okay. I get you. But she's even said in interviews, like she went back and she took vocal lessons to do this film because she was so impressed with the performers who had come before her, not Kristen Chenoweth, but just all that this long line of Broadway performers who kind of have that high soprano note range, that she took vocal lessons just to do this, and it shows. She sang her heart out, and her performance was grounded and character built the whole time. If I really want to celebrate anything about this, I feel like every one of the actors felt grateful and excited to be there. Like, I didn't feel like anyone was there for a paycheck. Like, it felt like these were people who were having the moments of their life. Like Ethan Slater playing Bach. You know, this is the guy who I don't remember if he originated, but I know that he was sort of the main one for the SpongeBob musical on stage, which, as far as like kind of, what is it, like pop culture Broadway shows, SpongeBob is one of the better ones, you know?
They've been having that on live stream on YouTube.
Oh, have they?
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Nice.
Awesome. That's awesome.
The pro shot, with Ethan Slater. So it's like,
yeah,
they're trying to cash in on that.
Yeah, and it's a great time to watch that, because he's good there, and he's really good in this. Like, you can tell, like, he was an inspired pick for Bach, because now that I see him in that, I now like, that's Bach in my brain. Just sort of the way he looks, the way he sounds, it's perfect.
Yeah, he definitely did an awesome job for sure.
So well, I'm curious what you thought of the cameo in One Short Day.
It was, and we're in spoilers, so it's okay. I was of two minds about it in actual real time. It felt incredibly self-indulgent and self-congratulatory, but I also felt like, if ever you're going to be self-indulgent and self-congratulatory about something in specific, why not let it be this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those things where, like, it was a little cute for my tastes, but also I let it slide. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I rejoicified over it. I thought it was amazing. I agree. I think it did go on a little bit too long, but I think it was such a fun, perfect way to bring them in. I do think, though, that the best parts for me were when, like, Kristen Chenoweth, like, puts her hand on Ariana Grande and, like, pushes her away and, like, stops her from singing. It was like the perfect diva moment. It was pretty awesome. I thought it was fun that they included moments like that.
Yeah. It's also interesting because I was slightly spoiled on it, in that I listened to the soundtrack before going to see the movie. And just as that song started playing, I said, wait a minute, that's Adina. Wait a minute, that's Kristen. And so I was ready for it when the movie happened.
So it wasn't a surprise for you.
It wasn't a surprise, but that's okay, because I heard it on the soundtrack, so I still got to feel those, like, the same, like, endorphins from it. But I always was thinking back to this quote that Chenoweth used to say in interviews. This is like 10 years ago. So obviously she's come off of Wicked at this point, but we're nowhere near where we're at right now. And I remember her saying, like, I'm getting to the point where if they ever make a Wicked movie, they'll cast me as Miss Marvel instead of as Glinda. And so when the cast came out, there was a brief moment where I'm like, I wonder if she's going to be Mrs. Marvel, just to play off of that joke. But, no, Michelle Yeoh she did fine in this, but I still enjoyed seeing Chenoweth show up here in the movies. Yeah. She's been talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely cool.
I think in terms of the supporting cast, I thought Jonathan Bailey stole the show.
Yes, like, he was such a great Fiyero.
The Dancing Through Life number, I think, was one of the best put together musical scenes in the film. I thought it worked just the way it was supposed to. I had a lot of fun picking out some of the dance moves that he was doing, like specific movements and poses that he was doing, and relating that back to relating that back to other characters. You know what I mean? Like that I don't know if you guys know what I mean. I guess I can't talk
We do.
about that. But
We do.
Yeah.
We
do. We got you,
we'll have
boo.
to wait. We'll have to wait a year to
Bach
have
as
that
well.
spoiler
Bach as
discussion.
well. He had some moments
Yes.
that echoed, let's just say echoed other characters.
Absolutely.
And it was fun to pick those out for me.
Agreed. Yeah, they were awesome. Thomas in the chat says also the actress who played Nessa Rose actually is in a wheelchair in real life. And Thomas, I'm glad you mentioned that because that actually brought me to something that I wanted to talk about. I love some changes that they made here in the movie around Nessa Rose and how people try to help Nessa Rose. In the stage play, she's basically just like a prop. People are pushing her around all the time. They're pushing her chair. They're not asking her. Like in the film, like Elphaba's like, no, don't help her. Like she's going to roll herself. And Nessa's like, no, I don't need help. I got this. Like, you know, for friends like who utilize wheelchairs, like they have told me in the past, like when someone just like grabs your chair and starts to push you, it's extremely like disconcerting and like takes your agency away and, you know, is really awful. And so like seeing them really spotlight this in this film was kind of amazing. I'm so glad they did that.
She had a little spot in that special that's on Disney Plus that I was talking about. And she said that as an actress, one of the things that she's never in her life had a chance to experience, and she got to experience because of this movie, was someone writing choreography with her wheelchair in mind. And so she got to feel as though she was actually able to participate and dance just like all of the other dancers. And I thought that was that I don't know. It gave me warm fuzzies just hearing her kind of light up about that experience on set.
That's awesome. I want to skip us forward a little bit. I'm cognizant that we're running a little long in the tooth, so we probably need to wrap up shortly. But Defying Gravity, Johannes, you kind of set the stage for some nitpicks or some grumbling, and I'm so glad that you did, because my biggest disappointment in this film, that's my second favorite song from the Broadway production. And my grumble here is that it is broken up so much. Like the song gets its momentum going, and then we have to break it up to watch Elphaba falling and like see herself. Like that was a cool moment, but like after the momentum is broken for like the fourth time, and then we have to like go into the like to like get back into the song. It was just really jarring. And even going back and listening to the soundtrack once it became available, like listening back, it's like you can tell there are like pieces missing, like things that obviously happen in the movie that aren't in the recording, and it sounds a little disjointed to me. So I think that was a little unfortunate.
I think location-wise, it's also a little weird because the balloon thing. There's a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense that happen in that sequence, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean,
it had to be an action. You know, I think they leaned into the action. They wanted to lean into the action more in this spectacle movie to make it more of a spectacle, and especially since this is the end of part one, that we're not going to get to see part two for another year. I think they wanted to go out with a bang. And unfortunately, I think maybe the song suffered a little bit, Brad, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. There were moments where I was getting close to the end of the movie, and when they would do those little breaks, I was like, I wasn't ready for it to end, but at the same time, I was ready for it to crescendo. And I was Defying Gravity was, I felt like I was edging a little bit too long.
Like even like that minute and a half, like crescendo when she's ascending, right? Like they break that even up, right? I was just like we spoke about slime tutorials, but I have been guilty of falling down the rabbit hole of who sang it better, and you hear the same notes sung by 20 different people, and it's like, I don't know. So yeah, I mean, it's just like
But
this is just so everybody understands. This movie is longer than the entire stage show,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's kind of wild.
And
Yeah,
we're
and
in
it's not,
for a bit of
not
a
because
challenge.
it's not because I can point to a lot of. I can point to a lot of little stuff they added. They let the movie obviously breathe more. I mean, in a stage production, it's bang, 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 bang. You know what I mean? It's
breakneck speed.
it's
Yeah.
breakneck speed, changing scenes, blah 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 blah. In, characters out. This obviously lets the story and the plot and even the songs, as we've talked about, breathe a little bit more. I'm not sure the songs benefited from that, but it did. It definitely lengthened the experience.
Here's what I
Johannes.
kind of
Oh,
worry
go ahead, Will.
about. Oh yeah, I worry just a little bit about the second film because when you look at Act 1 and Act 2 of the stage play, if you're like a deep fan of the musical, you're going to have things that you like from both parts of it. But I think the average person who's just sort of getting involved with Wicked, or maybe has heard it passively through cultural osmosis, a lot of the big moments and the big songs and the big scenes are kind of front loaded in Act 1. So I'm very curious how they're going to pull that off in a second standalone film. It works as a second act because, you just walk to the concession stand for 15 minutes. You got your $40 glass of wine. You're coming back, and now you're going to see the second part. But yeah, now we have to wait however many months to see the second one. I don't know. I almost wonder if this is going to be one of those situations where, almost like Lord of the Rings, where nowadays people don't just like watch one of the Lord of the Rings. You set up a day where you watch the entire trilogy. I almost feel like this is going to be like a 5-hour, like, we're going to watch this over the
With
course
an intermission.
of like a long day.
Right.
Yeah. Type thing eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that's what we're going to get next year. We're going to be signing up for a Wicked, double feature with a intermission in between. I think that's going to be a blast. Speaking of which, a lot of people I've seen on Facebook saying, "Oh my God, I had to keep my husband, or I had to keep my girlfriend, or whatever from belting out the songs in the middle of the movie and disrupting everybody." And so I think most of us may know by now, but there are going to be sing-along versions of this in theaters on Christmas Day.
Are we going on Christmas Day, babe?
Oh, you know it. You know it.
Yes.
Yeah. Aren't you wanting to sing?
Yes, I do want to sing it
Okay.
very much, right along with
We're
them.
going to 2 sing-alongs for Christmas. You know this.
I do. I'm so excited.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out for sure. I wanna close my commentary with just one more thing. It's a story. The first time I saw Wicked was actually with Jim, all the way back in 2009. We'd only been dating for a couple of months, and Jim, I'm going to talk about you like you're not here. He was also dating somebody else at that moment, and they'd been dating for longer. And seeing the musical with Jim, when I'm Not That Girl played, in my head, I was thinking, I'm not that girl. I'm not going to end up with this wonderful guy that I'm here with right now. It's the other guy. But then seeing this movie for the first time the other night with you, babe, I realized I was that girl, and it made me so happy. And I'm so glad we got to see it together.
Yes. Yeah, that has become probably my favorite song. Initially, it was For Good was my favorite song, but like when I think of it purely musically and melody wise, I really like. I know it's a simple girl wants song, right? Basically, just approach from a different angle. But I love that song musically. I love the melody, and it was performed wonderfully by Cynthia here. So, it's become my favorite.
I haven't had a chance to see it yet in this way, but I do a lot of stuff at the Alamo Draft House here in Austin because we have a bunch of them. It's a great theater chain. And so the way they combated because their whole thing is like, don't talk during movies, but they also know like, gosh, this one's going to be hard for people. So they actually did. I know they're going to do official sing-alongs in December, but they do these things called movie parties, where they provide props and then they relax the the talking for audience participation stuff. So like when, you know, I went and saw Shaun of the Dead one a couple of months ago, and you know they encouraged you to like basically quote along with any of the most quotable lines, you know. But so with this one, they gave people bubble wands and you know just all sorts of stuff like that, little brooms, and people were allowed to sing if they wanted to. So I didn't go to that screening. I went to a regular screening because I didn't want to hear everyone else singing. I wanted to hear Cynthia and Ariana sing. But
Yeah.
I may see one of those movie party screenings pretty soon just to sort of get that out of my system.
Yeah, that would definitely be a lot of fun. Also, props to the designers of the broom in this movie. I was a little worried we were going to get a repeat of the Harry Potter firebolt toy that was being used as a masturbatory aid. But the broom in this movie has like 3 prongs, so you literally can't like insert it. Like the toy is very well made to protect people against that. So
wow. So, okay. If you had asked me to write on a slip of paper a topic that I thought was going to come up on this episode, put that into a sealed envelope, and then do that 1,000 times, we would go through every single one of those envelopes and never would I'm glad the broom doesn't look like it could be used as a masturbatory aid would never appear once. I am gobsmacked and impressed. So thanks,
It
Brad.
definitely was an issue in Harry Potter. I remember that. I remember, wasn't there a whole group of people who objected to the movie because of it? If I remember,
it was a whole
right?
thing back then. Yeah, it was crazy.
And this movie, by the way, this movie had a lot of Harry Potter flavor in it, right? Especially at Shiz. You know, there were a lot of shots that was like, oh my God, this is totally Harry Potter.
I might argue that Harry Potter has a lot of Wicked DNA in it.
Perhaps.
Reverse.
Perhaps, but this movie was made after Harry Potter, so I'm talking about the movie, not the stage play.
They all draw from similar DNA, right? You know, what does a Magic Academy look like? You know, it's got to feel like a boarding school, but also it's got to feel kind of wacky and whimsical. So once you start applying those 2 filters on top of things, you start to end up with similar variations on those types of things.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a fair point, babe. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So you got to change it up with like brutalist architecture next time.
Yes, or give us some of the if we want to do sort of like a different take on Magic Academies, that's where we get into like the magicians or something like that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, fellas, this has been a fantastifying discussion. I'm so glad we got a chance to come together and talk about this film. I think the answer is clear, but just definitively, the Movie Bears podcast and Movie Mistrial, maybe official answer: Gladiator or Wicked? Who won the Battle of Glicked?
Wicked.
Yep.
Wicked. Yeah, that's all 4. Okay, there we go. At least, you know, as far as we go, that answers the question. But it was fun to pit these movies against each other. Of course, you try to enjoy them for what they are, as their own thing, not necessarily in a real battle. But I mean, we all know Wicked won. But this has been great hanging out with y'all. Before we say adieu for good, well, hopefully not for good, let's let people know how they can find us, chat with us in between now and the next time we record, or Johannes, before folks hear your lovely dulcet tones on our show again in whatever next episode that might be. Johannes, where can people find your show? And if you're up for interacting on socials, where might people do that?
Yeah, we're at Movie Mistrial on Instagram, Blue Sky. Let me see. Facebook. I think those are the 3 where we're at. And then Movie Mistrial as a podcast everywhere where you can find podcasts.
Rock on. Awesome. Thanks, Johannes. Jim, if people want to chat with you, where can they find you?
I'm on Letterboxd. My handle on there is at JJP Out West. My initials JJP and then the words Out West. I'm also on Facebook under my regular name, Jim Pugliafico.
Thank you, Jim. And Will, where can people find you?
Just look to the western sky.
Is that sky blue?
It is, yes. So yeah, you can find me on Blue Sky. Look for the Movie Bear. Look on Letterboxd. Look for the Movie Bear. I'm on Facebook. Look for William Lindis. I don't have the vanity tag there. So yeah, just look for me on any of those 3 socials. Say hi. Say where you found me. Let's talk about movies. I'm always game. Let's do it.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Wilf. And for me, you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has Chub, Chaser, Bear, Otter, Wolf, whatever label, friends in common with you. Please shoot me a message first. Let me know you are not a clever, hairy-chested bot designed to get past my defenses. You can also find me on Letterboxd at iBradPro. I rate every movie I see. I don't necessarily write a review for every movie I see. But if that's something that tickles your fancy, you can find me there as well. We will see you all. Gosh, I don't even know what we're doing next. We got to talk about it. Maybe Moana 2 ? Possibly. We'll confirm that. But listen, it is Thanksgiving week here in the United States. If you celebrate, I hope that you enjoy the holiday, and I guess we'll see y'all in December. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Take care. Goodbye, y'all.